Battle of the Ales.
Life is too short to be drinking shitty beer.
Welcome to another edition of Bands, Bikes and Booze Reviews. Yet another comparison video. And this is one I've been wanting to do for a while. And just before I caught COVID and lost my sense of smell and taste, I was going to do this one. And unfortunately, it was a pointless exercise. I was drinking them and the two of them tasted identical and they tasted like fizzy liquid, and there was no distinct difference between the two. I just couldn't get any real flavours out of them at all. I think my sense of smell and taste has returned. I want to try it out here because this is a good test. These are two of my regular fridge fillers when it comes to ale. Both great beers, really good. And this one especially, even though these are the young guns, these are a lot younger than this lot, Norton, who are quite an interesting brewery. Now let me get onto the Old Hooky first. Old Hooky is a beer that is brewed by the Norton brewery. They're based up in the Cotswolds. They've been going since the 1800s and they still, to this day, are the only brewery, I think, could be wrong, that use steam power in their breweries. And it's one of them, it's what's known as a tower brewery. So basically everything starts at the top, the raw ingredients go to the top and it works its way down through the building, and at the bottom of the building you get your finished product, you get your casks, you get your kegs, etc., and then they're out the door. And I think, as far as I know, they still use draft horses and all that for some local deliveries, which I think is absolutely fantastic, in the great tradition of English beer. It seems to be something that everybody's embarrassed about in this country, which I think is an absolute disgrace. Beer is shunned, or this type of beer, I should say, is shunned for some reason, and I don't know why, because it is a fantastic style of beer. Now, I want to get onto the style of beer in a minute, but I'll just give you a quick rundown on this stuff. Now, this is it's called Tongham T.E.A, or Tongham Tea, I think they've called it. Originally, it was called Traditional English Ale. And what they're marketing this now is as a sort of, well, they're calling it a bitter, which is, I wouldn't call it a bitter. And again, as I say, I'm going to get into that into the next section. I want to explain the style, or my take on this style of beer. But this lot are based in Tongham. They're down in the next county along in Surrey, and they've been going a lot less. I think they've been going since the 90s. So obviously, Norton have got a mass of experience, but this is a good beer. I'm not going to lie to you and say that this is, I'm tasting this for the first time. It's not. I drink these two regularly, but never together, never done a comparison. And I do like doing these comparisons because these are both good beers. And as I always say in these comparison videos, the beers that I'm comparing are very, very good. I don't compare a shit beer with a good beer. What I'd like, because there's no point. Well, what is the point of that? There is none. What I like to do is compare the best with the best and see if I can determine which one shades it, because there isn't much in it. If you've watched any of my comparison videos, you'll see that there's two fantastic beers being compared back to back, and it's probably they're the most difficult videos that I have to do in terms of taste, and it really is difficult for me to come up with a decision most of the time. So, and I do back and forth in a lot of these videos as well. Sometimes I really do think, well, that's the winner clearly, and then I start tasting it. Temperatures change on the beer as well slightly, and you can laugh, you can say it's all bollocks and all that, but the temperature you drink the beer in my opinion, does make a difference. When it's not just my opinion, science proves it as well. So I'm not really putting forward a controversial view. I have science to back it up. So there you go. Rant. Oh, well, that wasn't really a rant. That was just me. Talking passionately about something. But needless to say, this is a comparison video. Now, you might ask why I'm comparing these two. What style are you comparing? Well, it's an interesting thing because, in my opinion, and I want to explain what these are and what these aren't. Okay, so let me explain what they aren't, in my opinion. Now, this was always called traditional English ale, which I think is a perfect description of that. But on the website, and I think in 2018, this lot won the World Beer Awards, but it was in the bitter category. And I don't think it's a bitter, because bitters to me, as the name would imply, have a very, very big hop character. For me, the perfect bitter would be T.E.A. Boatmaker. If you watch the recent video that I did with the comparison with the Gem Ales, the Bath Ales Gem, they were two, in my opinion, bitters. For me, the archetypal bitters that I would describe that have all the characteristics, definitely the T.E.A. Boatmaker, the Coniston Bluebird, that is a fantastic bitter. Quite hard to get hold of, but if you can get hold of it, really worth doing. Don't bother yourselves with any of this John Smith's crap or that kind of thing. It's just not bitter. There's no hop character in it, and it's just fucking dog shit. And that's why I haven't reviewed John Smith's on the channel. There's a certain beers, and you can call me a beer snob, and I really don't give a monkeys. I will not review stuff like John Smith's because it's going to be shit, it's going to be a rant, etc. And nobody wants to see me ranting, do they? But that's my take. Bitter has got a characteristic, and the characteristic, as I say, I just want to reiterate this point so you really understand where I'm coming from. Now, I'm not saying this is set in stone, and the brewers could even argue that their beers are, well, they call them bitters, but it's all about taste. Taste is subjective, and this is my opinion. So, take it how you want, basically. But bitters, to me, they have a big British or big English hop character, and them hop characters are Fuggles, some of the very sort of peppery style hops, such as First Gold, Goldings, East Kent Goldings, etc., Fuggles, the usual type. Now, a big one for me in bitters is Challenger hops. Challenger for me is probably the defining hop for English bitters. Of course, there are other factors as well. But this has been proven with the Coniston Bluebird, and it really did impress me that much. They only use one hop, and that hop is a Challenger hop. So if you want to see what sort of character Challenger offers to a bitter, try the Coniston Bluebird. It really is, in my opinion, a really good English bitter. Not that easy to get hold of. You may have to go online, but if you can, please hunt it down. I reviewed it on the channel. It was, I think personally, it was one of the quite early videos, but worth having a look anyway. Now, what do I think these are? Well, in my opinion, this is, as the name would suggest, this is the perfect description. For me, this is a traditional English ale. So what do I mean by that? Well, where bitter has got the emphasis on the spicier side and the bitter side, in my opinion, the traditional English ale, it emphasises the fruit element of the flavour more than the hops, more than the bitterness of the hops, I should say. And that sweetness that you get on these, it comes from the malt, usually crystal malt. Now, I know that old Hooky does use crystal malt. I haven't got a brew sheet for this, but I would imagine that it does use crystal malt. It may say it on the side. I'll get onto that in the next section anyway, but can you see where I'm coming from with this? To put it in a nutshell, bitter, it's got the peppery and earthy and musty character of the English hops. Sounds disgusting, but it's not. It's really nice. That for me is what the emphasis should be on if you're going to be brewing a bitter. I'm not even going to go into the whole fucking amber ale classification of what seems to be happening with bitter now. But with this stuff, in my opinion, it emphasises the fruitier side of the hops. And by fruit, I mean dark fruit. Sometimes you get like an orchard apple type flavour. That's not an off flavour, by the way. I keep wanting to reiterate that point. That you do get, sometimes you get a sourness that does taste of apples, and that's an off flavour. Not where I'm coming from here. I'm talking about sweet apples, that type of thing. And basically, orchard fruits. That's what I get from a traditional English ale. Now, again, as I say, it's not the most popular style. It seems to be a bit of an embarrassment now. It's the sort of beers that you would get in country pubs. That's the sort of the image that likes to be projected. But I think if you don't try these styles out, I really do think you are missing out. And believe me, I have a couple of friends from Germany who love this style of beer, because you don't really get this style in Germany. In Belgium, I would say you sort of do, but not. How can I, well, it hasn't got the English character on it. Basically, that's what I'm trying to say. And this really is what we do well, and it's telling, in my opinion, that a lot of these new style craft brewers, they don't brew it. And I think, as I say, it's not very fashionable. Now, that's a sweeping statement, and it's probably not going to do me any favours making sweeping statements, because there are a couple of exceptions to that. So I don't want to say all craft brewers are not doing it. There are some great ones out there. The Moore Beer Company from Bristol, they do some very good traditional English ales, and there's a couple dotted around in London. And I am sure there is a load more dotted around the country. As I always say on this channel, my emphasis is not on what you perceive to be craft beer. In my opinion, this lot of craft brewers. So, you know, you can argue the semantics about craft brewing. Beer, it's such a complicated subject, and it really doesn't need to be. So let's get on to the next section. Let's have a rundown on the Hogs Back stuff first. Right, so they've called this Tongham Tea. It never used to be called Tongham Tea. It used to be called T.E.A, and the initials were for traditional English ale. I'm glad they've kept that, because that, for me, is a perfect description of this beer. The blurb on the side, I'll just quickly run it through, because it gives you a little bit of history on the brewery as well. Our story, we sit beside the famous ancient chalk ridge of West Surrey, the Hogs Back. The first brew at Manor Farm was T.E.A, traditional English ale, in 1992. Fondly known as Tongham Tea after our village, it was an immediate hit and has won us many national awards. And I can see why, because it is a fucking belter of a beer. Now, the hops. We are a small family-run business, and in 2014 we honoured the old hop growing tradition of the Farnham area by planting our own hops. We now have 6,500 plants in the field by the farm. So we have the very freshest hops, grown, picked, dried, and stored by the brew house. That is what I love. That is just fantastic. Growing your own hops. Now, obviously, you've got to have, as the Americans would call it, the real estate or the land to do it. So obviously, I'm not going to say, well, craft brewers aren't doing that. Well, you know, a lot of craft brewers are on industrial estates, and I do like that idea. I think that's brilliant. They obviously can't do that type of thing, so I'm no way am I going to hold that against them for not doing that. But I love it when they do. I mean, that is really, really good in my opinion. I'm going to read out. It's got some tasting notes on there. It's got the hops as well. So I'm going to read out the tasting notes, but I'm going to form my own opinion. This is not going to influence me, because I sort of know what it tastes like. Because obviously, as I say, it's a fridge filler. So the tasting notes: T.E.A is a small batch brewed finest English finest English malted barley, Surrey grown, classic bitter in hop, fuggles and water drawn from the chalk aquifers under the ridge, or under the Hogs Back ridge. Now, I just want to make a little point about that. So they're making a point that the water around their locality is chalky, or it comes through the chalky hills, right? Now, again, I don't want to bore you with the science, but the water has got a lot to do with beer. I think it's one of the contributing factors as to why the British, in my opinion, don't brew great lager. I think it's because the Germans have that lovely, pure spring water. I know we've got spring water up here, but we just don't seem to have the know-how to use it when it comes to lager. I'm not saying the English brewers don't have the know-how. That's not what I'm saying. I want to make that clear. But when it comes to lager, I don't think they have. And I think the water, or the geology around the water, doesn't do that, because there's a lot of impurities. You know, when you get stuff like this, like chalk and stuff like that. Of course, the classic example is Burton water, which is full of, you know, it's got quite a lot of sulfur content and gypsum, that type of thing. And that, whereas it's, you know, for lager, which is a very clean drinking beer, it's probably not the best water to use. But when it comes to this sort of stuff, it is absolutely fantastic. And I think that is why that is it's a contributing factor as to why it's a great beer. I also think that the fresh ingredients make a fucking huge difference. They really do. I mean, you only have to look at any Gordon Ramsay program, or any chef worth their salt. They always say, freshest ingredients. A lot of them, if you watch these cooking shows, they're picking their herbs as they're growing and they're chopping them up, or even throwing them into the pot. And the Italian chefs do this, especially with stuff like basil. You never see an Italian chef worth their salt. You never see them chopping it up on a chopping board. Basil, they'll just break it with their hands and just throw it into the ragu, because that's where you get the most flavour from. Fresh good quality ingredients. Sound like fucking Gordon Ramsay, but I'm not going to start swearing yet. Anyway, what else have we got? Yeah, so that's a bit about the water. It is a classic traditional ale, a malt forward taste with the hops providing balance. A lingering malt sweetness leads to a long, satisfying finish. When they say satisfying finish, I would change that to a long, fruity style finish. So you can see they haven't really made mention of this being a bitter, and I'm not sure why they've said that on the website, because no, it doesn't taste like a bitter. But I've mentioned that 1,000 times, and I'm not going to mention it again this next minute. Right, the Hook Norton. Now, these are the old boys. These are the ones with the experience, and I think it is a fair comparison to compare the two. Obviously, they grow their own hops. This lot, they've got the experience. So what they may or may not be lacking in fresh ingredients and homegrown ingredients, they have definitely got the experience. So let's read out the blurb on this one. Old Hooky is a beautifully balanced beer, fruity by nature, with a well-rounded body and the suggestive echo of crystal malt. Right, can you see where I'm going now with the bitter? Why I don't think these are bitters. Neither of them make mention of the big, or what should be a big hop bitter finish on the end of it. They always make mention of the fruit. Now for me, that is a traditional English ale. So there you go. Try it as an accompaniment to meat dishes. Cheers. Fair enough. What else have we got? We've got all the usual blurb. Just to mention, this is 4.2%. The T.E.A. is 4.2%. This is 4.6%. So they're reasonably matched on the ABV stakes. On the front, fruity and full-bodied, handcrafted in the Cotswolds Hills since 1849. Yeah, some pedigree that is. And Hook Norton are a fantastic brewery. They brew a lot of traditional English ales, and they do them really well. If you look on the channel, you'll see that I've reviewed the mild. They do an IPA, an English IPA. I think that's called what's that called? Off the Hook. That's a really good IPA in my opinion. I reviewed that and I was surprised at how good that was. But Hook Norton are a good brewery. Now, I've also tried their red rye beer. I've tried that in the Wetherspoons after a funeral, believe it or not, for a West Ham fella. I think that was this year. That was very sad. That was a good turnout though. Loads of West Ham turnout for that. Big Chaz, what a fella he was, great bloke. But we ended up in the Wetherspoons afterwards in Romford, and they had the red rye on tap, and I drank quite a lot of that because it was very, very nice indeed. So yeah, there's the two of them. These are both at room temperature. I thought if I'm going to get the flavours from this, then they need to be room temperature. Now, I know we've had a recent spell of hot weather, but I've had these in the kitchen. The kitchen's being done up. The back door on the kitchen is open, and there is quite a cool breeze coming in. So these are relatively chilled. I would just say a little above cellar temperature. So I need to do that just in case I've got COVID kicking around, and I want to get every bit of flavour out of both these beers, because this is one I've been wanting to do for a while. So let's shut up, let's get them both open. Right, I am really looking forward to this. COVID, you better have fucked off. That's all I can say. Otherwise, I'll fucking beat myself up. I can get the aromas already. That is a good sign. I wasn't getting that before. Right, there's the two caps. Hogs Back, the orange one. Hook Norton. I think if it was a toss-up between the two, I think the old Ridgeback, I think the old Hogs Back would get it. I've got to stop calling that Ridgeback. Ridgeback is a... Ridgeback is a beer. Where's the Ridgeback beer from? It's from here. I can't remember off the top of my head. I couldn't remember off the top of my head, but there you go. Right, let's get these in a glass. I'm going to put the T.E.A. in geographical location. So this is nearest London, so it's going to go in the London Pride pint glass. Can you see my logic here? I think these glasses are clean. As I say, the kitchen's being done up, so we ain't got a dishwasher at the moment, so I've had to hand clean these. So hopefully, the aromas of fruit on that. Let me put that down. And God, that is really strong smelling. Oh, how I've missed you so, sense of smell. Never ever take it for granted. Yeah, so I'm going to get 2 of these filled out. Right, as I say, that's the Bass glass. So Hook Norton is nearer the Midlands than Surrey, obviously, so I've put it in there. And you know what? There is not much in the colour between them two. Now, if you look at that, they look sort of very, very dark amber, chestnut, light chestnut colour, dark amber. But if you hold it up to the light, there is, well, if I hadn't have put them in distinctive glasses, I probably wouldn't have been able to tell the difference. They are identical. The T.E.A. appears to have some great head retention on there. But the Hook Norton, let me just fill it out a little bit more. Let me get a little bit more of a head on the Hook Norton. Seems to be a bit more carbonated, the Hook Norton, than the T.E.A. But there's carbonation in both. That's a good thing. Right, the T.E.A. Oh yeah, absolutely gorgeous. And as I said before, there is a big emphasis on the fruit, and that's what I'm getting. Particularly the orchard apple type flavour. It's like sweet apple, nice malty aroma to that sweet malt. You know, the crystal malt. Crystal malt, of course, does have an extra amount of starch and sugars, which mean that the sugars are released, and it gives it a nice sweet flavour. And this is really coming through in that aroma. Yeah, it's like very fruity styled hops. Now, I'm not talking American style fruit. This is English, you can tell. But it's lovely. That is fantastic. Lots of malt. A very, very slight hop bitterness that you can sort of discern on that. But it's all about the fruit. That's the big thing in that one. And I have to say, I really am impressed with that head retention on there. It is better than the Hook Norton. But obviously, the Hook Norton is brewed on a bigger scale. So you have to take that in consideration. I'm not going to bash them for that. That would be unfair. Now, this is interesting. This is more of a darker fruit aroma. Now, where I said that was like the orchard fruit, for me, this is more akin to like a raisin. There is elements of the orchard style fruit, but there is a darker fruit undercurrent to that, like a berry type fruity aroma to it, if you know what I mean. Dark berries, like, you know, I don't mean cherry, I'm talking about like blackcurrant, that type of thing. And it's nice. For me, in my head, this is the darker flavoured beer. But obviously there's no difference between the colour, but in a blindfold test, I would say this was the darker beer. It's just got a little bit more malt character on it, and the fruit is darker as well. But they're both really interesting. Oh, I love that. I just love the smell of them. More so than bitter. Can you believe that? But there you go. That's just me. So, all that remains now, let's get him down my fat Gregory Peck. Right, let's go with the T.E.A. first. And firstly, before I do, I have to say that head retention is fantastic. Really is good. Impressed there already with the Hogs Back. Nice. Fruity from the very off. And you get that. You get the sweet apple, sweet malt, and I have to say, quite a lot of carbonation on that. And it does make me, I wouldn't say it's aggressive, but it does make me realise now why the head retention is so good. There's a hell of a lot of carbonation on that. And of course, in all these bottled beers, all the breweries do shoot some CO2 into that. They have to. They do it in cans and they do it in bottles. It's the same. And almost always is the case when you have cans and bottles from the same brewery, the beer that goes inside them is the same. There's no difference. And I found that out from a brewmaster at Fuller's. There you go. Let me have another dive into this. It's really nice, really easy drinking as well. Full of flavour. That really is good. That's an English fruit fest. As I say, the two dominant flavours are the quite sweet malt on that, the apple style flavour. That's subtle, but there's other fruitiness in there as well, like I don't know, like a bit of an orangey style flavour going on there. Not as pronounced as the Fullers. You know, when Fullers have that sort of orange rind in there, certainly in the Bengal Lancer. Not that. It's more subtle than that. It's like a sweet orange, but that's nice. Nice light, nice mouthfeel. Reasonably full-bodied. I wouldn't say it's got a massive body on it, but that's nice. I do like that. Right, now the Hook Norton. What have we got going on here? Quite a bit more character on this. Or I shouldn't say character, more complex flavours on this. So you're getting a bit of everything. You're getting the malt, the sweet malt. That is apparent in there. As I mentioned before, you're also getting the darker fruit. What I said on the aroma, that comes through a lot on the flavour. So again, you're getting subtle. How can I say this? Subtle but big. It's a subtle amalgamation. Sorry, no, it's not. What is the fucking way I am trying to say this? So subtle, small parts resulting in a big part. Small parts being the various flavours, the big part being the fruit flavour on this. So the small, subtle flavours that are in here, hence the reason I'm saying it's complex. Complex is probably the adjective I was looking for. So I've been gashing so much I've fucking forgotten. So let me try again. Right. So how I perceive this. Subtle blackcurrant. I wouldn't say damson, I would say more like a sort of a raisin or plum, that type. Again, subtle. There's obviously caramel malt. There's caramel malt on both of them. So that's quite prevalent as well, adding to the sweetness. But you also get, on this, there's a late bitterness. Now, it's not in the same category as the Bolt Maker or the Coniston. It's not that bitter. It's not that real peppery, musty bitterness that you get or is characteristic on a bitter. It's not that, but there is a bitterness on there, a hop bittering that does come through on the finish, which is quite pleasant. It doesn't really overshadow the fruity elements or the caramel malt on this, but it does give it a little bit more, in my opinion, more character. And that caramel malt is getting bigger. It's not overpowering the fruit on there, but it's sort of on the palate. It's big. I'll put it that way. Right. Let me go back to the T.E.A. This to me is the lighter of the two, as I mentioned before. And when I say lighter, I mean lighter bodied. I don't want to say pleasant tasting. It's not as complex as that. That's what I mean. This would be, if I wanted to put it in musical terms, this would be the equivalent of, I don't know, Deep Purple, and that would be the equivalent of Black Sabbath. Now, if that makes sense to you, then you know where I'm coming from. It makes perfect sense to me, but it's not going to make perfect sense to everybody else. And if I had to pick a song, it would probably be, I don't know, that would probably be Smoke on the Water, and that would probably be Paranoid. And I'm just fucking going down an avenue that, you know, I always moan about pretentious fucking beer reviewers. Jesus Christ. And I'm comparing to fucking hard rock songs. Shut the fuck up and taste the beer, you twat. That's definitely the lighter of the two in terms of body. And the flavours aren't as complex. But there is character on this. That's what I want to emphasise. and it tastes. This tastes happy, if you know what I mean, and this tastes a bit more doomy and gloomy, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean this is heavier. This is more full-bodied. It's got a lot more emphasis on the fruit, and it gives a little bit more hop character, bitter, earthy hop character on the finish. But this is really nice though. I do like this, I have to say. Great, absolutely fantastic, and I love what they do. That's brilliant. The Hook Norton. I'm not going to go too much into comparing the two because this is going to be a long video, and I want to try and keep your attention. And if you've managed to stay with me when I'm comparing beers to fucking hard rock songs, then you're doing all right in my book. Humour me, please. Yeah, for me, now I'm going to make a decision here. And again, this is all about personal taste and opinion. But for me, I think I'm going to go with the Hook Norton. That's not to say that this T.E.A. stuff is a bad pint. It certainly isn't by any stretch of the imagination. And as I always say in these two, the beers that I compare are really good. I don't compare shit with good beers or subpar beers or average beers with great beers and bad beers. There's no point. I want you to go into an off-licence or a supermarket with an idea of what is the best beer to get, what to avoid. That's the ultimate goal of the channel. There's obviously a couple of others as well. This is therapy for me, believe it or not. But there you go. But getting back to the beer, I think the Hook Norton steals it by a gnat's chuff. Lovely. Really nice. Big fruit on this, and as it says on the bottle, it's got it on here. That is the perfect description of it. Fruity and full-bodied, and I have to say it has got more body to it than the Hogs Back. Now, body on a beer isn't always the best thing. So, for example, if you've got a really big-bodied, or what is being sold as a big-bodied session beer, I think that's probably going to get a bit too sluggish after a few of them. On session beers, on true session beers, you want a bit of a lighter body, in my opinion, certainly from my own experience. And this is what the T.E.A. has got. So again, you have to pick your occasion for these beers. Don't get me wrong, you're going to be a winner either way with both of them, but I think for just having one or two, or maybe even three, then the Hook Norton, that's got the body for it and it's got the flavour. They've both got flavour, don't get me wrong. But this is more complex, more character. And absolutely no disrespect to the Hogs Back Farm Brewery. The Hook Norton Brewery have got almost 100 years, well over 100 years more experience there. But that is not a bad effort from the Hogs Back Brewery. But for me, I think the Hook Norton wins it. So what's the verdict on these two? Well, as always, you're going to be a winner if you buy either of these. Now, again, and I do tend to do this, and I really do apologise to subscribers and viewers who come from the north of England and further afield, obviously in Europe and the States. There are quite a few American subscribers and viewers on here. Respect to you. Thank you very much for watching my channel. I do appreciate that, and I really appreciate your messages. Keep them coming. And comments and stuff, really do. It's what makes the channel tick, in my opinion, is the comments. And as you know, I've put into the schedule a once a month viewers comments section, which has been titled Pints of View. Thank you very much to Ballman's Beer Reviews for that. If you've not checked out his channel, please do. He seems like he knows what he's talking about, and he's a Carlisle United fan. Whereas I'm a West Ham fan, I have a lot of respect for people that support their local team, especially in the lower divisions. You have my ultimate respect for that. I'll be mentioning you in the next comments video, so stay tuned for that. Anyway, what was I talking about? I get sidetracked so easy. Well, yeah. So you're going to be a winner with either of these, and if you can find this and you're outside the southeast, then please, or you're visiting the southeast, please try it. It's a fantastic beer. If you can't get hold of it, you can buy it from the brewery online now. I know people are not willing to take a chance on what I say, but believe me, I really wouldn't give you duff advice. This is a fantastic beer in my opinion, and if you do value my opinion, or you trust my opinion, you won't go wrong with it, trust me. The Hook Norton is slightly more widely available. They're based in the Cotswolds area, which is sort of Oxford way, bordering on sort of Midlands. So if you're around that area, then you should be able to get hold of that. But for me, as I said, this does it for me in terms of flavour, in terms of body, and basically the character of it, where it's got a bit of everything. All the ingredients on this, you can really get the character on there. Sometimes you look at brew sheets and they say that they've put stuff in there and you just cannot taste it at all. With this, you get everything that's in there. This has its place. Don't get me wrong, I'm not disparaging this at all, even though Hook Norton are going to get my vote today. This is the perfect session beer if you like that style of traditional English ale. Not your bitter, as I say. This is your traditional English style of ale, as the name suggests. And I think if you get these, or if you get one of them, you're not going to be disappointed with them. So, for me, it's Hook Norton. So try it out, enjoy it, leave a comment, let me know what you think. And remember, beer is working class champagne.
Like and subscribe, or the puppy gets it. Isn't that right, Purse? Yeah, get off.